So let's talk about impact, leaking, sneeze, pee, and particularly in the context of osteoporosis. So even if you don't have bone density issues, you can totally benefit from this video, but we're going to do a little quick explanation of why it's particularly important for those of us with bone loss. When we have bone loss, we really want to do a lot of weight bearing and impact activities. So weight bearing is anything where you are walking, running, jogging, hiking, dancing. And for those of us who have pelvic floor stuff as well as bone loss, you know that sometimes those activities can lead to spontaneous leaking, which is not so fun. And I don't want you to have to choose between caring for your pelvic floor and caring for your bones, because we can do both at the same time. So that's why we're going to create this little 4-move sequence that you can do before you go and try and engage in your weight bearing or impact activities, and see if it helps your pelvic floor to be a little bit more responsive and resilient so you can enjoy your impact and weight bearing activities more. So for the first exercise, we're just going to breathe. And you have a couple of options. You can stand, you can sit in a chair, you can sit on the floor, just as you are. But if you have a soft ball or you have a yoga bolster, you can add a little external feedback, which can be really helpful. So if your knees are comfortable with a lot of bend, you could do this on the floor. I'm sitting on a yoga bolster. You could put the ball on top of a bolster or stack of cushions and sit on the ball. Or you can put the ball on a chair and sit on the ball on a chair. You could even just roll up a towel so that you get a nice round tube of towel. We're looking for something that's going to give you some feedback for what your pelvic floor is doing when you breathe. So when you breathe in, your diaphragm lowers, opens, and widens, and so does your pelvic floor if all of your pressure management systems are working as we hope they do. And then when you exhale, your lungs get smaller, your diaphragm goes up, your core narrows and lifts, your pelvic floor narrows and lifts. So having this little extra external feedback can help you sense that more effectively. And if you don't have a squishy ball and you don't have a towel and this feels weird to you, don't worry about it. You're just going to do the breathing part. So now let's start the breath. Begin with, don't worry about what your pelvic floor is doing, even a little bit. Just settle, relax as best you can, and breathe in and out 2 or 3 times just to connect your system to a breathing practice. Doesn't need to be big, doesn't need to be deep, doesn't need to be intense. Just ease your shoulders and your neck. And one more breath. Inhale and exhale. So now we're going to really deliberately kind of feel for this pressure change. As you breathe in, really picture your lungs getting bigger, your diaphragm coming down, and your pelvic floor coming down, and you may feel a little extra pressure into the ball. And then breathe out through your mouth like you're blowing out a candle. Your lungs are getting smaller, your diaphragm is pulling up, your abdominals are narrowing, and your pelvic floor is perhaps pulling up away from the ball. And you just repeat that process. Breathe in, lower, open, and widen. Exhale, narrow, and lift. So you're not actively doing a Kegel, right? Which is that deliberate contract and release of your pelvic floor muscles. But hopefully as you breathe, you can feel this subtle response, which is very Kegel-like. A Kegel is an artificial, intentional activation of the muscles. What we're looking for is, can you just feel your muscles responding to the change in your breath? So do one more of those. Breathe in through your nose. Breathe out through your mouth with some resistance. So if you felt your muscles just responding, and it's very subtle, it's very slight, then you're good to go and you're going to carry on. If you did not feel your pelvic floor muscles responding at all to your breath, you're going to pause the video And do 4 or 5 more breaths where you are going to deliberately add that Kegel sensation, where you are going to inhale, open, lower, and widen. Really feel the release and relax. It's a very important part of this process. And then blow out. And as you blow out, deliberately think of an octopus. I'm going to link another video, I guess down here, maybe down here, to the octopus breath. So as you exhale, think of all your pelvic floor muscles narrowing and lifting. And then you can hit start again. So after we've done our breathing, then we're going to go with some internal and external rotation of your hips, because your hip muscles, the muscles that turn your leg and stabilize your leg in your hip socket, are super related to your pelvic floor muscles. And in fact, some of them do double duty. Some of your pelvic floor muscles are also hip turning muscles. So for this, you need a yoga block. And then optionally, you want a ring band, a resistance band. You don't need it, but if you have it, that's great. You can have something to support your head on, or you can just use your arm. Lie on your side and put the block in between your knees and your inner thighs. You can go long ways, I guess. It's going to give you a little bit more support. You want your heels to be basically in line with your sit bones. Flex your ankles so you're working as though you were standing on the floor. Keep your pelvis totally still and stable. And then internally rotate your leg in your hip socket so that your heel goes up. And come back down. Push up. Imagine your heel, your foot, your shin. Imagine they are like 2,000 pounds heavy. You have to create some work to push your heel up towards the ceiling and slide back down. And press up. And slide back down. And you can do, this is going to vary from person to person. You can do 5 to 10 of these, whatever feels good in your body. So let's do a couple more. So you just stop when you need to stop. And you press up. And then you rest. Rest your feet. Take a breath in. Let the breath go. And then do another set. Press up 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. We'll just do 8 this time. 4, 3, 2. Last one, always making sure that your pelvis itself is not rocking in space. And then we're going to go to external rotation. So as I said, the band is totally optional. You can use it for extra resistance or not, as you prefer. Have something to support your head. And then we're going to do 3 different positions. Lift your feet, super stabilize your pelvis, and then think about turning your leg right from the depth of your hip socket and slide back down. Turn and down. Again, you can do anywhere from 5 to 10 of these. And you're looking for the movement to come from your hip socket, and we're trying not to move your pelvis. If you're not sure, grab your block, put it right in front of you, put your forearm on your hip, and if you feel your pelvis moving against your forearm, then you know you're not really dialing into your hip socket as much as you could and strengthening the muscles that will support your pelvic floor. Let's go for 2 more. And last one. And then bring your leg down. And we do the same thing with your feet on the floor. So the goal is to feel the back here. If you're feeling it more, you'll feel the fronts of your legs. But if you feel it more here than you do here, play around with maybe not using a band, maybe not lifting as high, really making sure your pelvis is super still, or maybe go all the way up and just do a little pulse at the top. For some people, it's the coming down that triggers a lot of quad work. So we'll go for another 5, 4. I think this is way more than 10 in this one. So you take a break when you need to. 3, 2, last one. Those of you who watch my videos often know I can't really count. Slide your knees forward, slide your shins forward enough that you end up with your shins parallel with the front of your mat. We don't need to have your knees tucked up a lot. We want to keep your pelvis nice and untucked. We do exactly the same thing. Press your heels together, turn your leg out right from your hip socket. I'll actually count this time. So there's 5. If you want to rest now, you could do that. Otherwise, carry on for 6, 7, 8. And you'll notice it's not a really big range. 9, it doesn't need to be. We're looking for precision here. And then come on back down. We're going to flip over and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, here we are ready to do the other side. So, super stable, nice and set. Flex your ankles, internal rotation. Going through your imaginary jello and really thinking of like a barbershop pole rotation of your leg and your hip socket to get those deep leg bone turning muscles active. We'll do 5 more in this set. Keeping your bottom leg nicely anchored into the floor. 3, 2, and last one. And then you come down and you just let your leg rest for a moment. It's not unusual for this to feel quite different from one side to the other. Reset your trunk. Think about sliding your abdominal muscles in to create a nice straight line between your ribs and your pelvis. Flex your ankles and press your heel up and pull your heel down. No flopping. Push up, pull down. Feeling for that stability, you could use the same idea of just putting your hand here in front of you. You don't have the block because you're using it to make sure you don't feel yourself rocking to and from your forearm. Couple more. And last one. Bring that leg down, lose the block. If you want to use a band, grab your band. Reset, right? So lining up your ribs to your pelvis, getting that slight easing of the back of your ribs open towards the wall behind you. Lift your hips, press your heels together, and turn and down, and turn and down. Again, this also frequently very different from one side to the other. So change things around a little if you need to, remembering that the target is this grouping of muscles right around your hip socket. Deep, we're looking deep. 3, 2, keep your heels high, keep your heels pressing together. Last one, bring that knee down, bring your feet down, reset, right? It's always a good idea to reset. And now same thing with your feet on the floor. Making sure that you're not ending up with your toes pressing together. You always want your heels connecting. You're allowed to be getting tired by now. That is okay. But we're still going to do the next one. Last 2 in this position. Last one. Slide your leg down, bring your knees a little forward, bring your shins forward so they line up with the front of your mat. Reset. And again, you could use your block strategy to make sure you're not rocking your hips back in space. And find that deep sensation in your hips. So we're doing kind of 10 or 12 in each position, but you might find you want to do more because it takes you longer to get these muscles to fire up, and that's okay. Sometimes this side for me tends to fire up really quickly, the other side a little more slowly. I'll sometimes do 15, 20 even on the other side because it takes me 10 to get my hip all nicely warmed up and feeling like it's working nicely. Last one. Bring that leg down, take your band off if you're using it, and then we can stand up. So now we're upright, which is much closer to the position that you're in when you're doing your impact activities. And we're going to do a controlled descent with a breath. And we're going to do it in 2 different orders of operation for your breathing. So what we're looking for is a fairly fast hinge down and back and come on back up. It's like a squat, but you're really thinking less about an effective squat shape and more about widening your sit bones and using your breath to catch and feeling your pelvic floor contract on that exhale. So you don't need to go very far. Right? And think of this as the downward part of a jump. You don't actually have to jump, but that's what we're starting with. Inhale to come back up. Exhale, sit bones wide. And come on back up. 3, 2, and last one. And if this is not working great for your knees, you could do a smaller bend and focus mostly on the breath. We're really thinking about this idea of your sit bones, right? So the bottom of your pelvis traveling wide as you do this little bend. And now change the breath. So instead of exhaling as you come down, inhale as you come down. So you breathe in and exhale to come back up. And this is to practice the idea of sit bones wide, inhale against a little bit of resistance, because when you're just walking around, you don't necessarily time every impact of your heels with your exhale. So we want your pelvic floor to be resilient and responsive on both an in-breath and an out-breath. Inhale and exhale to come back up. Quick little inhale. Sit bones wide, pelvis wide at the back. And as you're doing that, you can kind of let that idea of pelvic floor goes wide and open as you hinge back. Last one. And now, hopefully, with a combination of the breathing, the activation of the muscles around your hips and your pelvic floor, the activation of your pelvic floor against load with multiple breath combinations, means you can now jump or do heel drops or go for a brisk walk or jog with hopefully at least less sense of leaking. Let me know if it works. Pop it down in the comments below, send me a message, shoot me an email, send a passenger pigeon. I love to hear how things work for you and what else you need to know. See you in the next one.